There are 54 countries on the continent of Africa that are black countries. There are 16 in the Caribbean that are black countries. That means out of 195 countries in the world, 70 are black countries. Yet not one of those 70 countries has a nuclear weapon. Not one has built weapons of mass destruction to threaten the world. Not one has ever invaded another land to steal, conquer, or enslave. Think about that. Our ancestors left nothing behind that the world can point to with shame. No genocide, no mass shootings, no record of crossing oceans to chain other nations. We are the children of the only race that never tried to wipe out another people. Yet look at us today. We are the most oppressed, the most exploited, the most humiliated and silenced on this earth. We are blamed for poverty caused by stolen wealth. We are told to heal from wounds that were never allowed to close. We are told to move on, to forget, to forgive. While those who enslaved us still live in the comfort built from our stolen labor. They call us violent. They call us dangerous.
It is. All y'all other, I'm trying to figure out how Afro get in front of my mother race. I ain't never been to Afro color. I never been to Africa. Afro or Africa. Never been there. I'm not from Africa. I'm born and raised in Goose, Florida. I'm born in Goose, raised in Liberty City in the Poker Bean Project. Ain't never went to Africa. Ain't thinking about going there. And I heard it's a beautiful place. Yes. And I know it's the motherland. Yes. But not my mother, not her mother, and not her mother's mother. That ain't their land. America's real true land is right here in the U.S. soil.
There's a difference between saying I'm African versus I'm Black American, okay? Here it is. This is the proof, okay? I didn't write it up. I included the chat GPT in it, okay? There's a proof. You can't have something in common at one point. You have to have all points in common to prove such a thing, okay? So when it comes to African, okay, they don't have ties to U.S. slavery, nor the civil rights movement.
Hey y'all, I'm making this video as a Black American to vocalize some of my concerns surrounding the delineation conversation. I found that we have a ton of melanated immigrants and also our own Pan-Africanists that are attempting to hijack that conversation and demonize us in our desire to delineate. They are saying things like delineation is divisive, Black Americans are xenophobic, Black Americans are anti-African, Black Americans hate ourselves, and Black Americans are seeking validation from white people. All of these are baseless accusations that they obviously can't prove, but it's also a form of narcissistic abuse and narcissistic projection, which I do intend to speak on in a later video. Black Americans have found that in order for us to address disparities that exist under the pseudoscientific race construct, we must delineate. Right now, we are being erroneously identified as a homogenous group with melanated immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean, and it has made it impossible for us to gauge how we are doing as an ethnic group. That is the spirit and intention behind delineation. Anything else is a lie in order to control us and a narrative. Thank you.
Foundational Black American and American descendants of slavery. Delineation explained. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into an important and often debated topic, the delineation of foundational Black Americans and American descendants of slavery. At its core, this isn't just about labels, it's about lineage, history, and justice. We're going to break it down, what these terms actually mean, why this distinction matters, and why respecting it is crucial for the next generation. Firstly, American descendants of slavery is a lineage-based movement that emphasizes that Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in the United States are a unique group with a specific claim to reparations, justice, and recognition. Foundational Black Americans, similar delineation. It highlights Black Americans who can trace their roots to the beginning of the United States history, those whose ancestors built the country through slavery, segregation, and Jim Crow. Both terms draw a line between black immigrants who arrived voluntarily in the United States in more recent decades and those who are direct descendants of enslaved Africans in America. So why does delineation matter? At its core, delineation is about clarity. Black people are not a monolith. While all face racism in the United States, the historical and systemic disadvantages that foundational Black Americans and American descendants of slavery communities face are tied specifically to slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, redlining, and mass incarceration. Without this delineation, there's a risk of erasing history. Reparations, for example, are not meant for all Black people globally. They are specifically tied to unpaid labor, suffering, and dispossession of those enslaved in America. Recognizing this doesn't divide Black communities. It clarifies whose ancestors built the economic foundation of the country and who is owed.
As far as I'm concerned, since we met you people 500 years ago, look at us. We've given everything. You are still taking.
There are bookshops in Nigeria. It reflects very poorly on French people, but you have to ask them that question.
It's such good English. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Educated where?
Out here in Zimbabwe, they got a grocery store.
It's true. I mean, where would the whole Western world be without Africa? Our cocoa, our timber, our gold, our diamonds, our platinum, our whatever. Everything you are is us.
And when they arrive, they find the people there. It is estimated there were between 2 and 3.5 million Arawaks on the island in 1492. 11 years later, it was estimated less than 100,000 people were living on this island.
Got in there, you know that, right?
No.
Yeah, Burkina Faso is one of the directly affected nations by overthrowing Gaddafi that way. Sick of that.
Just as our strength lies in unified policy and action for progress and development, so the strength of the imperialists lies in our disunity. We in Africa can only meet them effectively by presenting a unified front and a continental purpose. So that's what they don't want. That's what the West, the WEF, NATO, the United States, that's what they don't want. They don't want people in, just like they don't want us coming together in the United States, they don't want the countries of Africa coming together. They need to keep them fighting amongst each other so they can control them.
The same people who have the audacity to tell us that we are poor countries. They are taking trillions out of Africa every year. And one might say, why is it that African leaders haven't done anything about this deplorable situation? Well, let me tell you, my brothers, they have tried. Documented to this day, 22 coups where leaders were assassinated. The first 7, when they decided they were pulling out of the CFA and that they're going to print their own money, they were assassinated. Every time an African leader has tried to do what's best for their country, they were assassinated. Majority of them aided by France, who felt that when there was a natural resource discovered in one country, they wanted to create a coup. So while the country is thrown into a civil war, they're siphoning the natural resource.
After committing one of the most brutal genocides in history, Belgium partnered with the CIA to assassinate Congo's first leader, Patrice Lumumba, a brilliant Pan-Africanist who sought to unite Africa against neocolonialism. They then dissolved his body in sulfuric acid. So that's what the West does in Africa.
It should also be noted that Africa as a continent is also owed reparations by Europe for the devastating impact of colonization and the transatlantic slave trade and the systemic extraction of its wealth and resources up to the present day. European powers have enriched themselves for centuries by plundering Africa's land, minerals, and labor, while leaving behind underdevelopment, artificial borders, and long-term socioeconomic instability. The effects of colonialism, such as poverty, political instability, and debt traps, are not just historical but ongoing, as Europe continues to benefit from structures of exploitation established during the colonial era. Reparations for Africa are not simply about money, but about acknowledging and repairing the generational damage caused by centuries of theft and oppression. I would also like to clear something up. This is why Africans do not owe Black Americans reparations. It's important to clarify this because while both groups share the legacy of enslavement and systemic racism, the responsibility for slavery and its lasting consequences lies with the European and American institutions that profited from it, not with African nations that were themselves victims of colonization and exploitation. Many Africans were also enslaved, brutalized, and stripped of their own sovereignty under European rule, meaning they too are due justice rather than being held accountable for the crimes of others. Black Americans' fight for reparations is directed at the United States government and institutions that directly benefited from slave labor, not at African people who themselves are owed reparations from the same global system of white supremacy.
I'm not disidentifying from nobody. Last time I checked, our Jamaican African brothers and sisters were enslaved. Last time I checked, our Cuban African brothers and sisters were enslaved. Last time I checked, our American African brothers and sisters were enslaved. We were all enslaved together. We were all brought from Africa together. Why am I going to disidentify from my Jamaican brothers and sisters, my Cuban brothers and sisters, my Black British brothers and sisters, my African brothers and sisters, when we are all being victimized by the exact same oppressor? The Jamaicans were enslaved by the British. The African Americans were enslaved by the British, except for the last 90 years. So why are we separating when we were both enslaved by the same power?
So why should delineation be respected? Respecting delineation is about acknowledging heritage. Too often, conversations about the Black identity in America lump all people of African descent together. While unity is important, ignoring lineage can create resentment. Think of it like this. Native Americans have tribal affiliations that matter. Jewish people distinguish themselves between Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Mirhazi lineages. Respecting those identities doesn't weaken them, it strengthens them. For foundational Black Americans and American descendants of slavery, the delineation is a way to protect their struggle from being diluted. It's a way of saying our ancestors paid a specific price and our community is still paying it today. So why is it so controversial? This subject is not without tension. Some people argue that delineation creates division within the Black community. Others worry that it could fuel resentment between African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, and Black Americans. But here's the truth. Delineation is not about exclusion. It's about specificity. If someone immigrated from Nigeria, Jamaica, or Ghana, their story matters. But it's not the same as someone whose great-great-grandparents were enslaved in Georgia or Alabama. Acknowledging that difference is not disrespect. What it means for the next generation. For the next generation, delineation means having a stronger sense of identity and history. It empowers young people to understand my family story didn't start with immigration paperwork. It started with survival against slavery, segregation, and systemic oppression in America. It also means clarity when fighting for reparations, policy changes, and social justice. If young people inherit this understanding, they won't be misled into thinking all black struggles in America are the same. They'll know where they stand, and they'll have a language to demand justice in a focused way. So at its core, foundational Black American and American descendants of slavery, delineation is about truth, respect, and legacy. It's not about dividing Black people. It's about honoring the unique historical lineage of those whose ancestors built the United States, unpaid and unrecognized. Respecting this delineation ensures their descendants are not erased in policy, history, or culture. The future depends on clarity, and clarity begins with knowing who you are, where you come from, and what you're owed. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, share, and to subscribe. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think delineation strengthens or weakens the Black community? Let's talk about it.